Jai Hind everyone. My name is Ashish Dixit, Assistant Professor Ajay Kumar Garg Engineering College. So my today's topic is client server computing. Its name is Web Technology, also running in a computer science and engineering department. Okay. So first of all, what is a client and what is a server? Suppose that I want to take some information by any other guys because I am a user. I am a user and I want to use and I want to retrieve some information. Because I want to retrieve some information, I want to take the some information. That's why I am a client. Okay. Second thing, server. Server have a full right that given any information to other guys. Means server provide the information for any other guy or for a user or for a client. Then this is called a server. So here friends, we will discuss about the whole architecture of the client and server. Okay. So look at this. This is our client machine. This is our client machine and this is our server machine. Client have some information. Want to get the some information through the server. Then first of all, client send the request and this request will be processed through the network, and through the network this request will be sent to the server. Means this is the client, he want to get the some information and send to the request to the server. Then its request will be sent through the network to the server. Got it? Then second thing, server get the request of the client, then server send the response. Send the response. Send the response to the user. To the user or a client. Then this response goes through the network and this response will be get to the machine, and this response sent by the server. Means client want to ask a question to the server and server send to the response to the client in the form of result. Then this give and take process is called a client and server architecture. Got it? Then what is a client and server computing? A client and server computing is an environment that satisfies the business need by the appropriately allocating the application processing between the client and server process. The client requests services from the server and the server processes the request and return the result to the client. This two-way communication is also called a inter-process communication. This mechanism is called a inter-process communication. Means the communication mechanism is a message passing use the IPC, inter-process communication, that enable distributed placement of the client and server process. Got it? Then client and server is a software model of the computing, not a hardware definition. Means this process is called a client and server mechanism that will be work on the behalf of request and response and also create a two-way communication. This process is called a message passing process, is called a inter-process communication. Got it? Then here in a component in the client and server, we are use a three type of component here. In a client and server architecture will be divided in a three component. First component is called the client. Then it is the front end of the application that users see the interact with the user interface portion of the application, validate data entered by the user, and dispatches request to the server programs. Okay, means client, it is the front end the application that users see and interact with this user interface portion of the application, validates the data entered by the user, and dispatch request to the server program. Then second thing, server. Then the server mechanism fulfill the client request by performing the services requested after the server receives the request from the client. It executes the database, retrieves, updates, and manages the data integrity. Dispatch response to the client's request. The server-based process may run on another machine on the network, and so the server is provided with file system services and application services. So a simplest form of the server are disk server and the file server, and the disk server and the file server. Next, so here this is the process, this is the client, and this is the server. This is work on the middleware. This work in the form of middleware. We can say that like a networks, like a network. So this process is called a middleware. This is the middleware. It allows the application to transparently communicate with the programs or processes regardless of location. The key element of middleware is network operating system that provides services such as routing, distribution, messaging, and network management services. NOS uses a communication protocol to provide a specific services. This process is called a middleware. So here we will discuss about the benefits of the client and server model. Benefits of the client and server model. First point, a divides application process across a different machine. First, non-critical data and function are processed on the client machines. Second thing, a critical data and functions are processed on a server machines. And second point, it optimizes client workstation for data input and presentation. And next point, it optimizes server for the data processing and storage. So it scales horizontally where the multiple servers are there. Each server has its own capability or a processing power. Therefore, processing can be done in distributed manner. It scales vertically where it can be moved to more powerful machines such as mainframe computers to take advantages of larger system performance. Next thing, it reduces the data redundancy. Next thing, a client-server computing provides integrated services to all small applications using a data dynamic exchange and object linking enabling. Word application uses application of paint and brush as a Visual Basic or a .NET application uses a spreadsheets. So client and server application can be developed without the considering hardware. Next thing, a data can be accessed with the help of the network from the DRAM, hard disk, or from a CD, DVD, and SQL statement. In the client-server model, you have independence of location for a data access and pre-processing and processing, that user can log on to client and can use any application provided that the user ID has these privileges. Anyone can use any application and from anywhere. So client can be set as a multiple tasking. Next thing, the transaction of the data application owning can be monitored, observed, managed, or valuable support is provided from the central location. So the client-server computing supports the central management system, CMS. So what's the disadvantages faces in a client-server architecture? First, dependability on a server. Here we will focus on we will depend on a server. It's a disadvantage. If one or two server fails, any operation and valuable services get stopped. But right now, maximum server have a backup plan. Okay. Second thing, high client request and high services availability can cause a network congestion. It's so obvious that if you have a critical level of client and request and critical level of services will be available, then network congestion will be occurs. Okay. Then next thing, cost of implementing the client server computing is always higher than the anticipated cost. Obviously, because if you are used a client server architecture, client server computing, then you will pay the high amount. Client server computing do not use any special client software to deal with all issues of the client. So software for a load balancing, security, distribution of the application. Next, client server architecture. So here we will discuss about the types of the client server architecture. This is the types of the client server architecture. Okay. here we will discuss about the 4 types of architecture. First, one-tier architecture. Second, two-tier architecture. Third, three-tier architecture. And fourth is n-tier architecture. What is a one-tier architecture? Here we will use a 3 types of component. We will use the 3 types of a component. First, client. Second, server. Third, client. Okay. So here we will discuss about these are the client and these are mainframe server. All processing will be done from here, and these are also client. Okay. So in this we have a various dump terminals without any processing, then capability. Without hard disk can be called as a display terminal. These terminals are attached in mainframe and mainframes to the processing. Suppose that this client machine not work, though no impact will be affected through the mainframe server and through the other client. Suppose that this client not working, but mainframe server is also working. So other client will be send the request and mainframe server sent to the response. Means we have a various dump terminal without any processing capability and without hard disk can be called as a display terminals. These terminals are attached to the mainframe and mainframe to the processing. Got it? This process is called a one-tier architecture. Second thing, two-tier architecture. This is called a thin client server deployment. Okay. So here, this architecture use a thin client, no processing ability, and fat server approach or fat client thin server approach. Server store a data always as application program. So here, this is the client and this is the server, and server based programming that's also connected with the data and application. It's called a database. So server sent to the request to the server, client sent to the request to the server, and server received the request and search about relate to request and find the answer in our database. In our database again provide the information related to a request of the client and to the server, and this server send to the respond to the client, response to the client. This process is called a thin client server deployment process. Next thing, fat client server. Here two-tier architecture is not effective if number of clients are more. Okay. If number of client will be more, though no impact will be affected, no impact or a no effect will be declared or will be shown to the server. So here client sent to the request, email retriever, shared file, process, printing, supporting, then directory servers. These server get the information by the client. This server get the request to the client and get the information through the shared file and again send to the response. Okay. So only few users, the architecture is not used where application is critical. Advantages: most tools of two-tier architecture are robust, work very well in the environment, where business rules are static, rules that determine how data can be created, displayed, and store the changes. If a client server application uses two-tier architecture, then the development of such application is fast as compared to the other architecture. Next thing, disadvantages. So, not suitable where the transactions are more and heavy. First point. And business not suitable where business tools keep on the changing. Okay. These are two disadvantages. Next thing is the three-tier architecture. In this model, there exists a middle tier between client and server to improve overall response time, whereas in two-tier model, client directly interact with the server application without the presence of any intermediate application. Here, three-tier architecture is divided in three layers. First, presentation layer, and we also call the client. Second thing, functionality layer, also called the application server. And third thing, the data layer as a database server. So, three-tier model attempts to overcome some of the limitation of the two-tier schemes by separating the presentation, processing, and data into separate distinct entities. So here we use a FAT client user interface request, and this is the application server. This is the application server running in a single application, business rules and processing. Okay. Then again, this sent to the request to the server, and this server also sent to the request to the database server, and through the database is collect the information, okay, and showing the whole information to the user. So in three-tier architecture, generally application run which is developed preferably in a language which are portable platform, independent, and support a multi-threading. And client interact with the application using dynamic link libraries, application programming interface, and also work on the remote procedure call. Got it? Then middle tier within a contained application server, business rules are basically used for following function. First, translate the client request into the database query using a structured query language. Second thing, translate the data received from the database server to a client from report or a web pages. And next thing, perform high control and high performance interaction with the database server. Okay. Advantages: in two-tier, any database request is done using SQL, whereas in three-tier RPC is used, which is more flexible. Next thing, three-tier client is not required to understand SQL. Next thing, three-tier resources are allocated in flexible manner. And modules of the middleware can be reused by the server application. So we have multiple types of advantages, then obvious some disadvantages will be occur. Okay. So here, with the development of the middleware in three-tier architecture, the need of features like a network management may be occur, fault tolerance, server load balancing problems will be increased, and multiple tools that will matchers may be in the form of complex. Okay, thank you very much. If you have faced any problem, then comment in a comment box. Thank you very much.